Welcome back, it's Nine, and today we have three topics to discuss. We are going to be discussing a Horizon VR game possibly in development. We are going to be discussing a Final Fantasy XVI update, and we are going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV being a permanent exclusive for the PlayStation platform and obviously PC as well. Now, before we get into that, if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to get notified about all my upcoming videos, and hit the like button. It helps the channel a ton. Now, let's get started with this Push Square article that's titled Job Listings Renew Speculation Regarding Virtual Reality Horizon Spinoff. So Fire Sprite, the studio behind PlayStation VR's survival horror roguelite The Persistence, is recruiting a string of new staff for a VR action-adventure project adapted from one of the most original and successful multi-million selling console IP titles in the last 10 years. Previous job listings have also referred to a multi-million selling action RPG and specifically referenced PSVR. So the advertisement for the lead producer position elaborates and says, "This is an exceptionally exciting project, partnering with the IP holder to create a whole new chapter in the exciting and highly original universe they have established, utilizing the full immersive capabilities and VR to build a new narrative for fans and newcomers alike." If you don't know already, it was rumored over a year ago that Sony was exploring the possibility of a Horizon Zero Dawn spin-off built within virtual reality, but at the time, Blood and Truth developer London Studio was believed to be leading that project. But given its relatively small size, it wouldn't be unusual for it to recruit external support. However, it's worth noting that, as pointed out on Reset Era forums, London Studio has since removed any references to PSVR from its website, suggesting its direction may have changed over the past year. So as you guys all know, PSVR is a niche product, right? Not everybody buys one, especially when you compare it to the scale of how many PlayStation 4s are out there, and it makes a difference, of course. PlayStation VR is, in its infancy. Truthfully, VR in general is still very well in its infancy and has a lot of room to grow and is still a growing medium for video games. I do think that they're going to want to continue to be pumping new content into PlayStation VR, especially if they want to make a PSVR 2 and want to put their IP into that as well. Obviously, if they, put IP and put projects out there for this specific platform, then they are more likely to get consumers to stick to it and buy into it. Like myself, for example, I don't own a PSVR unit, but I've used it before. And truthfully, if there were more enticing titles, maybe that would be something that I'd go out and invest my time and money into. But for those of you who are excited about PlayStation VR and have one, this could be the next big PSVR game for you guys. A Horizon spinoff would be interesting, and I'm curious what that would be like. But on to our next topic, and this one comes from PSU.com, and this is originally from an interview with the Washington Post, and this is going to be about Final Fantasy XVI. In an interview with the Washington Post gaming section launcher, Naoki Yoshida, Yoshi P, state that we do not want to say something that's half-baked and cause speculation on the title. Yoshida then follows up with, any Final Fantasy fan, depending on which Final Fantasy title is your jam, the point that you get excited will tend to differ. He then goes on to say that everyone will likely have their own view of what the next Final Fantasy should be, at saying something vague early may cause people to form expectations, and those expectations may not end up being a hit. And it does seem like this is a response to Final Fantasy XV and Final Fantasy VII Remake, because they did suffer from long marketing hype cycles, from announcements and reels coming way too early. And of course, that was a problem. Obviously, Final Fantasy Versus 13 then turned into Final Fantasy 15, switched from one platform to next gen to being cross-platform. There was a lot going on at that time. I understand that it's not that simple with Final Fantasy 15, and then Final Fantasy VII Remake had a lot going on as well. It seemed like there was a lot of missteps from point A to finally releasing the product. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII Remake released in a much, much better state than Final Fantasy 15. But even so, I totally get what they're trying to say here. You know, a lot of us went into 7 Remake thinking, hey, this is going to be a remake of the original game. Turns out it's supposed to be a sequel. Turns out there's a lot of different things happening with that title that, you know, threw us all off. And based on all sorts of different statements from different, you know, developers, we were so confused with what was happening with this game. At least I was, and I was covering this game extensively at the time, and it just seemed like one person was contradicting the next person. And I'm glad that they were kind of looking at it as, we don't want to do that with Final Fantasy 16. This is Square Enix themselves taking a look at what they did with the previous title and saying, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to create confusion. We don't want people to speculate based off things that we're saying and they really have nothing to do with the game, and then they get disappointed. Like, I totally respect that they're able to look at their game and say, hey, or they're able to look at their colleagues and say, hey, we don't want to do that same thing. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think when you love a game or you love a franchise, you should definitely be able to criticize it because you want it to do better, because you love it so much. That makes you a true fan, as people would say, right? That's at least in my opinion. Now, Yoshida concludes with saying, so with Final Fantasy XVI, whenever we do reveal more information on it, we hope to show what kind of game it's going to bring and what kind of excitement we can bring. And I love that. I love that. I love that they're being so direct and saying, when we show you what it is, you're going to know what it is. It's not going to be something that you're unsure about. You're going to know exactly what you're looking at, what to expect to a degree. And that's what you want from a video game developer. You want them to show you a project and you get the gist of it. You're not going in thinking, oh, is this something else, right? I'm not going to give any examples because I don't want to upset anybody and hurt their feelings, but truthfully, yeah, their points towards FF7 and FF15, yeah, absolutely. They make a lot of sense. And this is Team Square Enix. This isn't another developer. This is literally Team Square Enix and their Division 3 talking about this. Now, on to our next topic, and this is about Final Fantasy XIV. And this is from the same interview, but I got this specific segment from Twisted Voxel. I just like the way that they formed it. And it's titled, Final Fantasy XIV will get content for 5 more years. Other platform not in consideration. Very important, very, very important point there. So Yoshida talked about his experience with developing Final Fantasy XIV, as well as discussed other platforms that they might have planned for the game in the future. And according to Yoshida, Square Enix wants to keep the support for the MMO going for 5 more years, which means there might be more expansions after Endwalker is released later this year. I imagine that we're definitely going to get more expansions if there's 5 more years of support for that game. Now, when it comes to putting this on other platforms, because we talked about how this is getting a PS5 upgrade, and what does that mean for, say, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, if it's possible to run on that. They're saying they currently don't have the time and resources to bring the game to other consoles like the Xbox One, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch. They're focused on creating the expansions and updates for the game for now. He says, we provide content on a fairly regular basis, and our cycle is rather condensed, Yoshida said. And it is a fairly stable cadence that we continue to follow. We have to think about long-term planning with additional platforms. We need additional testing for that particular platform. So it kind of exponentially grows the amount of resources that needs to be allocated. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, this far into it, are you really going to be looking at putting this on another platform? It just doesn't make sense to do that. You know, the majority of their fan base is probably going to be on a PlayStation anyway if they're going to play on a console, and the other segment of them are going to be on PC naturally, because that's just seems to be the best place to play MMOs typically. And yeah, I don't blame them. Like, there's no sense in now, you know, so many years into it, putting it on another platform. But it is exciting to hear that they are going to support this game for 5 more years. And I personally am actually jumping back into this game. Really excited to experience all the expansions that I have not started yet. I've only beat the base game, and which I was pretty happy with. And this is going to, I guess, be a continued PlayStation exclusive for the foreseeable future, if ever they do decide to put this on other platforms. But from the way it's looking, I don't think they're going to bother with that, because how much money are they possibly missing out on in terms of the resources it would take to make it for these other platforms versus how much money they would make. I guess they just don't see the trade-off being worth it. But that's all I have for you guys in today's video. I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think of this new job listing? Possible a Horizon spinoff for virtual reality. Would you like to see that? Would you play that? Do you have a PSVR unit? What do you think of this new Final Fantasy XVI news update? Obviously not a substantial update, but them just saying, hey, we're not going to throw you off here. Do you agree with them? Do you like what they're saying? Do you agree that maybe the way they revealed 7 Remake and the way that they revealed Final Fantasy 15 was not the way to go? And lastly, are you excited that Final Fantasy 14 will be getting 5 more years of support? And on top of that, how do you feel about it continuing to be a PlayStation console exclusive? Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to get notified about all my upcoming videos, and hit the like button. It helps the channel a ton. You can follow me on Twitter and Twitch. Links will be in the description. And share this video with a friend. I will talk to you all on the next one. Take care.